Well, hello and welcome to the Student Mission Podcast. My name is Mads.
And my name is Ed.
And we are part of the team here at Fusion. And at Fusion, we have a vision for every student to find hope in Jesus and a home in the local church.
So tune into each episode as we chat to students and hear inspiring stories about how they are boldly living out their faith and sharing Jesus with their mates at uni.
We hope that each of these episodes leave you feeling equipped, but also inspired to reach your friends with Jesus where you are,
whilst also hopefully having a little bit of fun along the way.
Well, welcome to this episode of the Student Mission Podcast. This week, we are talking to a student named Rob in Loughborough, and him and his mates have been doing brilliant things in regards to student mission and evangelism. They've created a small group purely based around reaching their mates and reaching students on campus. It's so good. They have thought of crazy ideas like worship on a roundabout, like washing people's feet on campus, and loads more. And they've got some amazing stories and fruit to share off the back of that. Rob, along with his mates, has also been running Alpha for his rugby mates as well. And so we're going to hear a little bit more about that as we chat to Rob later in this episode.
I'm looking forward to it.
But without further ado, we would love to hear a little bit more about what student life is like. And so every week, we're going to ask a different question to students to do with student life and student culture. And this week, we've gone with the question, is it ever okay to steal your housemate's food? Or have you ever stolen your housemate's food? A big question, Ed, a big question.
Yeah, it is a big question. I think often it's one that is quite controversial when you're chatting to your housemates or people you live with. It's almost like, what's acceptable here? What's okay? I mean, I have to be honest, I had a big reputation at uni as a scrounge. So I don't think I'm necessarily the best person to speak into this, but I would be really interested to hear what students said.
Yeah, I think it's a grey area, but I think that reveals a lot about
grey area is actually the better way of describing it.
I think it is. But a lot of people might say it's very clear and very black and white, but I like to call it a grey area because I was in fact a scrounger and I think I will always be. At Fusion, I do have a reputation and I am called by my Fusion colleagues, what am I called again? Stasher. Because if I see free food and I think I'll have that later, I just pop it in my bag.
So obviously there is a particular point of view that you're getting from the two of us. So we're both scroungers.
We are both scroungers. So we'll either be put in our place today or we'll be validated in being scroungers. So let's find out. We're going to start with our first response from a student. And this is a written up response. And this is what they said. I personally believe it is not okay to steal housemates' food. As someone who has lived with strangers every year and has food intolerances, there are a lot of foods I can't eat. In general, though, if I did live with my friends, I would not steal their food. As with everything, stealing is just morally wrong. And I think that at least asking first and replacing it is a much better option. I've never personally stolen any food from my flatmates, and I don't think they've stolen food from me. But if they did, I think I would just appreciate the honesty in them asking to borrow, because I think that is okay.
Well, I feel very guilty for how I lived my life for 3 years.
I suddenly feel bad for the people who I've made upset from stealing a little bit of milk every now and again. I feel a bit, conviction might be the word.
Yeah, I mean, I think we say steal one person's steal is another's use, is another's borrow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess if you're consuming the food, you're not borrowing it. But
it's stuff that might have gone to waste before. If your milk's going to go off in 3 days and it's been open 3 days and there's still half a pint left.
Yeah, I think there's nuance to it, isn't there? There's as you say, it's a grey area. So, if food's going out of date and needs to be used, I mean, I get the food intolerance thing. That's actually you need to be respectful of that. And I do think it is obviously the right thing to do and polite to ask if you can take someone's food. But
I think so.
I do feel there are maybe certain foods that are just fair game, communal. I'm talking milk.
Yeah, I agree.
Butter.
I agree. No one's eating a whole chunk of butter.
Other spreads and condiments.
Okay. Jams,
your other preserves, Nutella. I think that's fine. I think it's obviously good to still ask, but I think if you're taking someone's meat or their vegetables, kind of up, where's my mixed peppers gone? Then I think that's probably a bit more.
True. Whereas milk just feels like a communal thing in general. If you're having a cup of tea, then I don't know, it's just something you share, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. What does the other student say?
Okay, so the other student, we've got a voice note from this other student. So we're going to have a listen. We're going to see what they think. Part of me, I've not listened to it yet. Part of me is hoping that they validate the way that Ed and I live. This student is based in Lincoln.
Okay, great.
It's a third year student. So let's listen to what they have to say.
Unfortunately, I have actually stolen my housemate's food, and on certain occasions it was in a position where it was okay, but in other circumstances it wasn't okay. For instance, I know that if I was making a coffee and I ran out of milk, my housemates would be fine with me just taking a bit. I wouldn't have to ask them. I would just, take a bit. But other circumstances, I've grabbed a bit of the grated cheese in one of my housemates' fridges just to finish off my meal. And yeah, definitely feel guilty afterwards, but I'd only do it if they had a full bag, or I know that person wouldn't completely mind. But yeah, I have done it before.
Wow. Such innocence, but also such guilt.
What was that student's name?
Oh, should they remain anonymous? No, I'm going to out her. Her name is Alice.
Great. Well, I think Alice is probably a bit more on our boat of,
I think, yeah.
Ask for forgiveness, not permission. No. But yeah. I think as we established, it is good to ask in advance. I feel like grated cheese, that's one of those things we'd be like, cheese is expensive, like cost of living, like, so actually now that's probably something you should need to ask in advance. I also think if me, you and Alice were at uni together and in halls together, I think that we'd all be fine because we all have the same mindset. I think the issue might come when you've got two people with different mindsets. You've got the people who are like, yes, every drop of milk is mine. Every drop.
Versus you people who are like, life's just easier if we're all just communal with it. So as long as you've, I guess, had that clarity and gone, do you know what, we're a house full of scroungers, then I think you're fine. I think your problems probably arise when you've got a mix of people or when you live with people you don't really know very well. Yeah, I think it's probably about good communication, isn't it? Like actually, if you're moving in, like you're getting a house or, into a flat, just kind of establishing like, are there foods that we're okay if everyone takes? What foods are off bounds for certain people? Or like, can you at least ask in advance? And then I think, that's what uni's for. It's about figuring out these relationship dynamics. It's character building. That's right. Well, that was good to chat about that. And yeah, each episode we're going to be talking more about different topics in uni life. But for now, we're going to get into our interview with Rob, and we really hope you enjoy this episode. Rob, welcome to the Student Mission podcast. It's really great to have you here. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited. It's been a good day so far.
Good, nice one.
Brilliant. Rob, we'd love to know a little bit about who you are, where are you now, what are you doing in your life, and what are you up to?
Yeah, my name's Rob Colwell. Originally from Istanbul.
Brilliant. Nice. Istanbul, you got a Turkish passport?
I haven't because I'd have to be in the Turkish military. So
okay, great.
Fair enough.
We'll swerve that one.
Maybe not. But anyway, I grew up in South East London, Bromley area. And then I currently go to Loughborough University. I'm in my final year, so technically fourth year, which I feel like a fresher still. I feel I've got a fresher mentality.
Yeah.
But final year, doing geography and sports science.
Brilliant.
Nice, that's great.
Exciting. Well, Rob, we'd love to hear a little bit more about what you're up to in regards to Student Mission. Each guest we have on here, we have asked to come on here because of what they're doing in terms of stepping out in mission and evangelism and in faith, I suppose. And so we would love to hear loads about that. But first of all, I suppose, where has that heart for mission and evangelism come from for you? Where was it birthed in your spiritual life, I suppose, in your family life? What did that look like for you?
Well, I think I've definitely had beautiful examples. My dad's a bit of an evangelist. He does crazy things like give out mulled wine at Christmas and invite people to different things and invite people to know Jesus. That's been really cool. And then further back, my great-grandfather as well was an evangelist.
Oh, wow.
Filling the Royal Albert Hall 52 times, Brilliant. 52 nights in a row.
Wow.
And that was a post-war revival. So I think I've had some good examples. And then, so as a kid, just inviting friends to things, I didn't even know what the word evangelism was, but you're doing it. You're just living life, trying to share with your friends about this good news. So you've had a heart for mission and evangelism just because of the people around you, setting that example, I suppose. And how about your relationship with God? When did that develop, and what did that shift for you from a perspective of mission and evangelism as well? Yeah, so I think like primary school age, Evangelist Rob was on fire. We went to this youth group. We had about 10 people going at the time. Not my church, a church opposite the school. And I just thought it'd be a good idea to invite my friends. But, you know, a few years later, there was about 200 at this youth group.
Wow.
And I obviously was just oblivious. I just had an amazing time at this club. But I was talking to my mum a couple months ago, and she was just like, Rob, that was, you know, the inkling of that little gifting that you had right back in when you were like 5.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. But for me, I struggled going to secondary school. I had a bit of a dualism go on. I had Rob at the weekend, you know, going to church, whatnot, and then Rob at school. I like playing sport, football, rugby, cricket. So I was in those circles, and so I didn't do very well. So like if you had to do a little graph of my mission, you got, as a young kid, you're going up, and then nothing for like quite a long time. But then it picked up again. I moved school, and that's when it really started kicking off. But, you know, God's faithful, even in those years where I wasn't really following the Lord closely. Like my friend who was friends with me through all of secondary school came to know Jesus like last year. It was awesome. I was like, wow, God really was using me even when I wasn't really paying attention.
Yeah, for sure. And so where does your motivation for mission come from? I guess the simple answer is Jesus. But is it because your heart breaks for the lost? Is it because you actually just love chatting to people and you feel so passionate about Jesus? What is it about it that makes you want to tell people about Jesus?
I heard this really good story. It's like, imagine you're crossing a road and you're waiting for the green man to come, and your friend's standing next to you, and they step out before the green man shows it's still, you know, not supposed to cross, and there's a lorry coming, right? And they step out, they don't see the lorry. Well, anyone in that situation is going to grab their friend's bag and pull them out of the road, you know. And so for me, when I'm talking to my friends about Jesus, if they're struggling with their mental health or anything, like, of course I'm going to grab them and pull them out the road. Like, I can't think of any, you know, the opposite is to leave them. And I don't want to do that. I want to see my friends come to know him too.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And yeah, I guess you were saying about your like family history. I think some people could probably look at that and be like, well, of course you're going to do mission or evangelism. That's what your family does. It's the family business. But like, I think that's like good to know, because it's like, actually, just because your great grandfather or your dad did that, that's not like you should do it. If anything, that may be something like, no, I'm going to push back on that. I don't want to. Yeah. So it's more like what God has been doing in and through you and how he's been breaking your heart, which is, I don't know. Does that ring true? Or? Yeah,
I had to develop in me. Like, it wasn't like with evangelism, there's gifting there. You know, God's been giving us all like beautiful gifts to speak to people, and even if you're shyer, just to get alongside people. But also got like what goes alongside it is like that integrity, that character development, which takes time to develop. And so you can be gifted with all these things. Like I had this culture growing up of knowing what evangelism well looked like, but the character took time to develop. So I think it was a mixture. It was a mixture of those two. And it's only since going to university where me and friends, like, we've really seen people come into the kingdom.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
great. Yeah.
And one thing you guys have been doing, I've been watching it on Instagram, is this thing called Loughborough Truth. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is and the motivation, the vision behind that as well?
So a couple of my mates were just brainstorming, thinking, and they looked at different Instagram accounts that are doing like sort of Christian content. Yeah. And we just thought like, well, let's get on campus. Let's just ask people questions that and see what their truth is. It's a bit of a buzzword at the moment in our society. You think, oh, it's my truth.
Yeah.
But we were like, okay, let's go and ask people. And the response has been really cool for the content. But then actually what's been better than that is the conversations afterwards with people. Yeah. Where it's like, okay, you asked me that question about like, would I die for my mate? We've gone really morbid. Anyway,
it's a big question.
It's a big question. Like, would you die for your mate? And quite a lot of people said no. And it was like, all right, well, Jesus died for you, and before, you know, you were born.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa, that's kind of mad. Like, it is mad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so great conversations afterwards, and inviting them to like Alpha course or to like Sunday gatherings, whatever. From that has been really cool. That's where the fruit's been. Yeah. So yeah, Loughborough Truth, give it a follow on Instagram. It's good.
Yeah, so people have been quite open with that. Like, have generally been receptive? Has there been like pushback? It's been quite easy just to go out and do that.
Yeah, it's been good actually. I mean, like some people just got the headphones in and don't want to chat, but that's fine. Sure. But the people that we have talked to, they're just giving their point of view. And like, I think what's really good about it is it's sort of like the guys, I say we, the guys are set up as a community sort of thing. So it's not just like one person who's hosting, like each video is a different host. Like, we're getting different perspectives on all of them. Like we're not editing out views that we don't necessarily agree with.
Interesting, yeah.
And so I think that's been a real special point of it as well, actually, that it's a community sort of project rather than it just being like one loud person who's got a microphone going around like campus and stuff. So that's been good.
That's really powerful because I think actually I think sometimes as Christians we think like, oh, people don't want to be asked questions, like they're fearful of like that, when actually like questions unlock the door to so many different things, and like what can feel like quite a simple thing actually, as you say, has led to this thing where you get this relationship that gets built up afterwards and where people are getting invited to church and stuff. So that's really cool.
Really cool. And everyone who's involved in that, are they all confident evangelists, or is it kind of a means of them stepping out?
No.
Definitely not.
That sounds bad. No. The answer is actually no. So each week we made a big group chat from people from all different churches across Loughborough.
Oh, wow.
And just like, okay, we're going to go film at 12. Who wants to hold the camera? So someone holds the camera. Who wants to just be prayerful and be praying for us? Who wants to do the interview? So like there's a whole host of roles. It's not just the person who's asking the question. So like a real team effort. So like, again, that's just different, the body working well, like different gifts being used.
Nice.
That's really cool because it speaks of church unity across the city and all pursuing the same thing, which is for the kingdom of God and for God's glory as well. And what a great means of someone growing in evangelism and going, oh, do you know what? I'm really nervous, but I'll come for the first week and I'll hold the camera. And then the next week, they're being willing to ask the questions or to be on camera. And you're like, what a great way to kind of scaffold that and to grow in mission evangelism as well. Brilliant. And you have created a small group that is completely centered around mission evangelism. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so in my second year at Loughborough, my good friend Peter started a small group called the Heart of Worship, where basically we just had worship time.
What a great small group name.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, really
normally
cool.
You have like a small group interest, don't you? Like climbing wall small group.
Or like, or
the heart explore. Of worship. Yeah.
Or like expand.
One word.
But anyway, Heart of Worship. Yeah. And that was an amazing year where it wasn't necessarily people that would say that they're worshippers, but they just came and it was just amazing. And so I took a year out of studies, and as I was out, I was just thinking about a small group and what one I was going to be in and all of this sort of stuff. And it was in a prayer time, just had this thought about doing like that worship small group, to expand it to like, not just to be in my mate's front room, but actually to go out and do it with other people and bring in mission. And so sort of had this idea to call it Heart of Mission, like Heart of Worship.
Yeah, it's good.
But then I read a book by Jackie Pullinger called Chasing the Dragon. And one of her she's in Hong Kong, she works with the addicts in Hong Kong. And one of her famous quotes is that she was like, I want to have a soft heart and hard feet, because I want to love the people that are around me, have a soft heart, but I don't want to be too precious about where I walk. I'm going to walk into the dark areas. Good. So we decided to bin off the name Heart of Mission and go for soft heart, hard feet as the name of our missional small group.
Good stuff.
I love that.
Yeah, really good. So that started, when was that, last year, this year?
So 2023.
2023. And again, how did that work? Did you tell people if you're an evangelist, come and join the group? Or again, was it a mix of people who were wanting to grow in evangelism? Was it people who had a faith a long time who were joining the group? What kind of mix did you have?
Yeah, so I contacted my friend Piers, who's a bit of a loud guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, mate, I'm thinking of doing this thing. Like, do you want to get alongside me? We'll lead it together. So that's been really great.
Okay.
But then we just kind of put it out there to like the church community, like anyone want to join the small group, like come through. And this guy, Peter, who led my small group in second year, came like, it's like, Rob, look, I like play the piano. I'm not loud, but can I come? I was like, yeah, come.
So good.
It's been amazing. Yeah. And then there's a few guys, I reckon half of the small group actually have come to Christ in the last year.
Wow.
So
and how many people are in the small group?
There's about 10 of us.
Amazing.
And about half of us are brand new Christians.
Wow.
And which is just awesome. Like the fire on them is just amazing. Yeah. So that's been part of it. That's been so good. It's like one-on-one conversation is where that real life, springs. Sometimes it's in gatherings with lots of people, but those one-on-one interactions, which small group like facilitates, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've seen real fruit. Like so we've been doing out weeks where we go out and do things, and then in weeks where we've had like some teaching or worship time, whatever. Okay. But one of my favorite in weeks was that we did like you got 4 minutes. So we did like a scenario. It was like your non-Christian friends come up to you and said, "Can you tell me about Jesus?" You've got 4 minutes. So we all spent our time like writing our stories, whatever. We had a bit of all right, let's try and get these sort of points in. And we went around sharing the stories. Half of us we were just in tears, like, because obviously you do life with people, but you hadn't heard their testimonies before. But they just come through with this stuff and a real vulnerability, and we're all just like in bits. Yeah. It was just amazing. And one girl in particular, she said that was a night where it went from like head to heart. Yeah. It was like, okay, this is what I'm living for. So it was just like, that's just awesome.
That's so good.
Yeah, amazing. And it sounds like those in weeks are actually really, really important. Some people might be thinking, well, if you're doing evangelism, surely you should be out every week. And maybe that is true, but it seems like actually God is stirring something in those in weeks, building the relationships between you guys as well, but also the Spirit is stirring something in your hearts as well. Yeah. And it's preparing you well for then when you do go out. So what are some of the ideas that you guys came up with in terms of the out weeks? How did you decide what you were going to do? What did you say when you first were coming up with those ideas?
Yeah, so week 1, we went into the prayer room there's a prayer room under the church in Loughborough, and we just sort of like, no ideas off limits, like let's just make a doc and we'll just list things. And like I had a thought in my head and I was like, I don't want to say this because if I say this, we'll probably have to do it. I don't want to do it. But we haven't done it yet, actually. We're waiting for the weather to get warmer.
Okay.
Because it's currently cold. But it was to go out on campus, set up a sign with a hot water and wash people's feet on campus. Now, I don't expect anyone to actually want to get their feet washed. I'm hoping that no one actually wants to get their feet washed. But the whole point of that is to like go to do it. Yeah. You know, we read these stories in the Gospels and it's like, all right, well, let's go see it. Let's go do it.
Yeah.
Like he's given us authority on earth to do these things for his glory. Let's go and do these amazing things that we see really in the Gospels and in Acts. The whole Bible, but anyway.
Scripture.
It's scripture. So that's really exciting. That's sort of the idea where we did a little brainstorm.
And what other ideas did you come up with? Can you remember other ideas that were kind of put down or things that you've already done, I suppose? We
had worship without walls, which we basically said we want to worship outside.
Okay.
Nice.
And be visible.
Okay.
So we've worshipped underneath underpass in Loughborough, which is a bit dirty, but it was the acoustics were great. Great fun.
Underpass
awesome.
worship has always been underrated in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just something.
It's really cool.
It's definitely moved that. What was the motivation, but why the underpass of all places?
Well, it's a bit of a dodgy place in town and you know, it's a bit notorious for some drug deals to go down there as well. And we were like, well, let's go to like what the world would see as like the dirtiest, dingiest place and go and worship and bring light to that place. Great. Yeah. And so that's what we did and it was awesome. It was amazing. And so another time we went and there's a big roundabout right on so campus is one side, town's the other way. And it's not like a mini roundabout. It's like
tiny little one.
It's one of the big ones.
Yeah, nice.
Right. And we were like, why don't we just go and worship on the roundabout? We set up a banner which said, "Heaven is here." And we just sang. And some people in their cars like gave us a thumb up. Some people a different finger. Other people
another digit.
Yeah. Other people stopped and like chatted out the window. Some people that were walking past, we just talked to them about it, invited them to church. But that was awesome. And we were all like bricking it before. We were like, I was like, I don't want to do this. Yeah. Why have I thought of this idea? Yeah. Why are we doing it? Yeah. But we went and like first minute, still bricking it. After the first minute, it was just like liberating. It felt so free. Yeah. It was amazing. And like we're all there, like singing our hearts out on this roundabout. It's just like, it was just amazing.
So good.
It's so good.
Good. Yeah, and I guess I love the heart behind that as well, like worship without walls. Like, because again, I think we can sometimes feel like it has to happens within set Christian boundaries, but actually no, we're declaring our love for God. We're praising Him like that. That should, like, why shouldn't other people see that? Like, that worship is like missional in of itself, I guess. So that's a great, and like bringing, if we've got a light that we need to let shine, then like actually doing that in the place where it's most needed is really encouraging.
Let's go do it.
Yes, go do it.
So how do you navigate the bricking yourself with, for want of a better phrase, with the courage to actually do it? Because a lot of people might be thinking, that's great, you've done worship on a roundabout, but absolutely no chance I'm doing that. That's terrifying. But so how do you navigate that for yourself? And as you're leading a group of other people who are also probably quite scared, how do you actually push past that barrier of fear and actually push into it?
Yeah, I think firstly, like, we know if you step out in the name of the Lord, you will not be put to shame. And like, because like the small group, like the ideas that we had all came from a place of prayer where like we really felt God was in it. That's like, okay, well, we've got a firm foundation. Yeah, we're okay. Like, we know that He's with us. So primarily that, and then secondly, we set up this WhatsApp group chat, just with like parents, like people just praying for us around the country, just from different connections. And so each week we say, oh, we're going out on the roundabout today. Please pray for us.
Yeah.
So we know that we've got like a whole host of like prayer warriors behind us that are like covering us in prayer. So we don't need to be fearful at all. And even as we were doing it, we had one person walk around, so someone praying for us continuously as we were doing it. So they were just sort of wrapping us in prayer. So really we had prayer around the country. We had prayer like really close in the vicinity. Yeah. There was another small group that were meeting at the same time. It's actually called Navigate. You know how we were laughing at the
Yeah. Navigate.
Anyway, they were meeting at the same time, and before we went out, they prayed for us to go, like just as to commission us to go. So like we were just completely wrapped in prayer.
So good.
And so the nerves went after a minute.
Because I guess in that moment you're like, we're not doing this in our own strength. Like,
no.
Like it's just like, oh, we're actually depending on you, here, God. And there's, I guess, that even that attitude of prayer and bringing people into that just all helps increase that dependency. And then that, we're partnering with you, God, and whatever you want to do here.
Yeah, and that word partnering is really cool as well, because like the real adults, I call them real adults, because you know what I mean, like adults.
Adults, yeah.
Like, what do you mean by adult?
I mean, like, not at uni.
Oh, great.
I don't think you're a real adult yet, though. Like, I know you're not at uni, but like,
a few grey hairs needed.
Yeah.
Well, I found grey hair for the first day the other week, so we won't talk about it.
That's kind of mad. But yeah, they can partner with us. So they're not at university. They don't have the opportunity to go and speak to a lecture hall of students, but they're been so excited to hear the news that's been going on, to partner with us in the work that we've been doing. It's been awesome.
Yeah, so good. It's amazing that intergenerational connection of mission as well, because you can think, well, I'm a student, I'm doing mission on campus, so it's just to do with my age and my stage. But actually, we need those spiritual mothers and fathers as well, those spiritual parents. Yeah. And I know in the Hebridean revival, like so much of that was sparked by these two old ladies in their house deciding to pray between like 10 a.m. and 3 a.m. And you're like, actually, it's crazy, because that then impacted the youth and the young people. And like all of a sudden you realise actually the kingdom of God is this intergenerational, beautiful mess, but also this beautiful creation. And you're like, actually, the intergenerational part of mission is so, so important as well.
That's great.
So tell us a little bit more about Food Week. You did a week where you went and bought food and then pushed into whatever that was. Tell us more about that.
So on our list that we look at, we had a thing just said Food Week, and we didn't really know what that meant.
Okay.
But what we did is half of us went to Lidl. Other supermarkets are available.
Good.
Say
Good
that.
to know.
But anyway, went to Lidl, and we just walked around and just thought, and just asked the Lord, like, what do you want us to buy?
Yeah.
Just like put something on our heart. I went for, like chocolate, those like chocolate brownie cakes.
Oh yeah.
Good choice.
Good choice.
Yeah.
I went for some fruit compote, but we'll talk about that later.
All right.
Other things. My friend went for onions and like 8 litres of milk. Like
Nice.
I was thinking, okay, he's properly heard from the Lord there, because the onions, that's mad.
I wouldn't have thought of onion as the most missional of foods.
Yes, exactly.
Food's universal language.
I went for sweets, biscuits and cake,
big win. Yeah.
Anyway, we buy the food, we go off in pairs, around the student area in Loughborough. And we prayed if there was any numbers that wanted to come to mind that we want to knock on 87 or something, then we'd knock on that. Or a few of us had a little like friends of friends that we knew lived at that door. So we went and knocked on there and say, oh, like, do you want something from our bag of treats? So we went and did that. And we must have knocked on 20 to 30 doors. Wow. And we got rid of pretty much all of the stuff that we had bought. And just had amazing conversations. Again, invites to Alpha, invites to church. Yeah. But the one particular amazing moment was I was with my friend who quite new to knowing Jesus. I was paired with her going around, and she was, like, there's a girl that lives over there that I sort of like semi-know. It'd be really good to knock on her door. And so we're like, okay, we knock on her door. And like, I'm thinking, all right, well, you know, I'm with this girl. She's only been a Christian a few months. Like, I'll take the lead on it. It's all right. I'll go in and, you know, knock on the door. She's in like a bolt. She's like, we're here because Jesus loves you. I'm like, what?
Straight in.
What's going on? And I was like, hi, at the back. Anyway, and we were like, we pulled out this fruit compote thing. I don't even know what it really are. It's just like frozen fruit thing. And we're like, oh, this is for you. Like, you know, Jesus loves you and cares about you. And she then the girl started going crazy, and we were like, what? And she was like, I literally just finished a bag of fruit compote, and I was gonna have to go and buy another bag tomorrow. And you've given me exactly the same brand that I use, like the same one. And she was just like taken aback, and she's like, do you know what, guys? Like, I've been thinking about Christianity and coming to church, but I just don't know. I don't know people that do that. And we were like, hello, we're here.
Here we are.
And so she came to church, and she's been reading the Bible. There's a group of girls that have just all come to want to know Jesus recently. They've been meeting for Bible studies. And she came to church on Sunday, bringing a bouquet of flowers and gave out flowers to people.
It's
only a second time at church. It's just like,
so pure.
Yeah. So but I guess as well, like, you've just come with a fruit compote, and that's just been like that giving and generosity has sort of been modelled to her. Like, and that was amazing that God would just work through like something which would seem really insignificant, but it was exactly what that person wanted and needed in that moment. Yeah.
And we built friendship as well. That was the other thing. So, you know, we saw her other times for coffee, and I gave her a book by J. John. If you know a guy called J. John, he writes really good books for missional stuff. Yeah. There's one called Get Connected, which is really good. But I gave her a book called Will I Be Fat in Heaven, which is all about like the questions you don't want to ask because they seem too silly.
Nice. I don't even think I thought that question, but
it's an interesting question, isn't it? But anyway, I gave her that, and she read through all of that in like a couple of weeks, and she's like, great, amazing, like that friendship. So that food week was us being crazy and going out and knocking on doors, but it was backed up with friendship and fellowship and
I think that's the real strength of you guys doing this as a small group. It's not like, great, we've done it, now let's chill. Like there's like ongoing community there that can help catch up.
That's so true, because like actually 3 of the guys, including myself, from the small group have actually started doing Alpha in their front room. So you can just make an account very easily. And they've literally just invited their friends over to watch it in the front room, like on a Tuesday. So we meet on a Thursday, but on a Tuesday. So like the small group's branched out into these Alphas, which then have created these little communities, and it's been awesome.
That is a huge ripple effect. Amazing.
I've got a few practical questions. Some people might be watching thinking, that's great, you've been to Lidl, where are you getting that money from? Is it falling out of the sky? How does it work?
So we kind of just all were like, we're all just going to buy something, and like that's just going to be our offering. But then money actually did fall out of the sky.
Did it?
But like we all did that, not knowing like, okay, like it's fine. You know, I'm going to spend that money. That's okay. So it's worth it. But then a non-Christian friend of mine heard what we were doing, and they were like, oh, like, that's amazing. I'm going to send you a tenner. I was like,
amazing.
What? Okay.
Oh, cool.
And then someone on the prayer thing was like, yeah, I heard that you're doing that, and I want to pay for it. And we had too much money. And so we had a little, well, I separated it from finance thing, but it was like, we've got a little,
it's on a different account.
we've got like a soft hearts, hard feet bank account here where we've got like leftover, which then we use for another week. But that was just like, wow, like that was just unexpected. So that's really good.
God's just provision and generosity.
That is like the 5 loaves and 2 fish when they had 12 baskets left over, and you're like, what do we do with this?
Yeah.
Use it again. Use it for mission. Use it to sow into whatever's next.
Exactly.
Amazing. And you have a heart for mission evangelism, not just within your small group, but also within your sport and what you do at university. So tell us a little bit more about that and your heart for, especially, I suppose, your rugby club and your rugby team, and your heart for seeing them come to know Jesus as well.
Yeah, so I play rugby league, which is weird for a southerner to do, but I love it. And I think actually, like, to answer this question properly, I had to, like, last year when I was away, I was in Turkey, and I was in and around the Turkish national team set up, which was really fun.
Cool.
But I couldn't play the whole year. I couldn't play.
Why?
I could train, well, because of different paperwork things,
right, okay,
and
okay.
it was
boring.
Legalities.
Boring.
Yeah.
But I couldn't play, but I still had to go. I still went to training every week, and it's sort of a real moment of like, why am I in my sports club? People listening, they might be in like a society, whatever, a non-Christian context. It's like, why am I here? Like, is it because I'm a competitive guy? I like winning. But what's the real reason why I'm here? Well, the real reason why I'm here is to get alongside these guys and to like walk life with them. And if I can talk to them about Jesus, then amazing. So yeah, that's what I've been doing at Loughborough, which has been really fun. So inviting people to an Alpha course. So our church run Alpha on a Monday night normally, and that's when training is. And I was like, well, problem, because the people I want to invite, we're not going to miss training. So I was like, can I just run it in my front room on a Tuesday?
Yeah.
And invited the guys over. And so week 1, it was me and 10 others
Wow.
watching this Alpha video. Week 2, I got my mate involved, Joss, to help me out.
Yeah.
And it was me, Joss, and about 15 or so others. Wow. And so then after
that's
that,
a full rugby team.
Well, yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
All in this front room.
Yeah, so we run out of space. So I went to the church and was like, we're going to need a space here. And so basically what happened is throughout the whole Alpha course, I think it was, the head count was about 80 people came throughout the whole time. So each week we probably average around 20. Yeah. But over people came for 1 week, or they came for a 5-week stretch.
Not just on the rugby team, like
not just on the rugby team. Like we had some women's rugby people come, which was great, and just my friends that I met on my course, just a whole host of different people, but just awesome. And there's been fruit which has come from these things. Like there's a baptism service happening where 2 or 3 of the guys are getting baptized, which is just awesome. Amazing. I'm going to be a wreck on that day hearing the testimonies. I was just it's going to be so but that's just been amazing. And that wasn't from like some crazy like going out on a roundabout or anything. That was literally like, I've got training on Monday. When can I do Alpha? I'll do it on a Tuesday. Like that, Yeah. It was just awesome.
Yeah, that's, and I guess as well, like that just built momentum really quickly when there's like 80 people. Like, and it's not about numbers, but each like number represents like a person. And it's like now you're seeing people getting baptized, giving their lives to Jesus. It's amazing. Obviously, it took in more people than just the rugby setup, but like at uni, stereotypically, like rugby lads are, big drinkers, up for a good time. Probably like would see like maybe as like one of the harder groups perhaps to reach. Like do you feel like, but that feels like completely the opposite. Like if someone said, who are you trying to reach? Yeah, the rugby team. People maybe a bit like, hey, good luck. Yeah, how'd you find it? Like it seems like they were so open. Was it, or with? I
think outside perspective is the case. Yeah. But I'm one of the lads. Like I'm in there. On the pitch when you're playing with someone, you build that sort of family aspect. Yeah, okay. It's very much so like a church, which is very strange, but it's true. And like, so they you start to build trust with each other, and so I think it was just a natural progression to talk about these sort of things. Yeah, which has been really good.
So it's just coming out of like shared relationships. Yeah. Like we like each other, we're friends, like we're family. Why would we not want to share in each other's experiences? And like, Fusion did some research where it was like 74% of students said they would try church if invited by a friend. So like if you're their friend and you're inviting them, then like out the team, then obviously lots of people responded to that invite to come and do Alphas. That's amazing.
Exactly. And actually from that, so that was in my second year, in my final year, I got asked to be the welfare officer of the club, which normally is a role that, welfare officer of a rugby club normally is like the joke role where nothing happens.
Yeah.
But it's been awesome. Like it's been great because like I've been having conversations with people, some about Jesus, some just about mental health well-being. But it's like really opened up this space where like, okay, now I've even been given an actual role to talk to people about stuff. Like, so it's really valued. So you might think in my sport and culture, this, you know, I might not be valued or all of this stuff. But actually, no, you know, if rugby league's valuing a welfare officer talking to their players, then they'll value it in pretty much any sport.
So good. And what a testament to the power of invitation as well, because people listening might be thinking, I don't know where I'd start with worshipping on a roundabout, or where I'd start with knocking on doors and chatting to strangers. But actually to start in the place that God has placed you with the relationships you already have, it's an amazing place to start. And that is still mission. That is still evangelism. You don't always have to be on a street corner doing mission evangelism. Start with the places that you're at. And that's such a testament to who God is and the way that he is working through you and the places that he's placed you in, and how he uses the gifts and passions that he's given each one of us as a means for mission and evangelism as well. It's so powerful.
Yeah, like on that, my next door neighbour has come to Christ like from freshers. And that wasn't from like doing a crazy thing.
From when you were in your first year?
So in my first year, he was my next door neighbour and we just were mates. I invited some stuff and he didn't want to come for a long time. And then he just got into the community and absolutely loved it. He's getting baptised soon as well.
So good.
But that, again, that, you know, you have these crazy stories where people come, but you also have these like, where it's like slow burns.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just cool how, you know, Jesus he knows what is required to bring someone in. And for some people, it would be like that boom moment. But for other people, it's just like that. We're walking along a garden path.
Yeah.
It's going to take a little while.
Good.
Yeah, stick in there.
Yeah.
Stick in there because it does make a difference.
Yeah.
Oh, huge.
And have you faced backlash of any sort from the rugby club, from the university, for this evangelism, this mission, telling people about Jesus? Or actually, have you had a lot of favour within that as well?
A lot of favour in the rugby club, which is really cool. One session I got a bit injured and I was standing at the side. I was just chatting to the head coach who was like screaming, like, get over there.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you know, is there anything I can pray for you for?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, actually, like, there's a family situation going on. Prayed for him. Turns out that he's actually a church goer.
Oh, wow.
Or had been, and has gone back into church now. And it's just like awesome. So like, obviously, if you get the head coach, you know.
Yeah.
But so that's been in that sense. And then to be fair, I've been very blessed at university. Like there is that openness that we have been allowed to gather and to do things. Now, obviously, not everyone's going to be happy because we have a very, you know, the evil one is around, and he's not happy that we're bringing people to know Jesus, and Jesus is active on campus. So yeah, it would be a lie to say that it's all been like walking with daisies and everything.
Yeah.
But no, it's not been something that's hindered.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
So good. And Rob, what would you say to someone who's listening or someone who's watching and really wants to get involved in evangelism where they are and mission where they are, but feels like actually no one else is doing it, so I don't actually know where to start, where to begin, and what actually to do? What would you say to them?
I think what we sort of already we have spoken about it, like that prayer is like your foundation, but then also just starting where you are in your context. It might be your mate who's on your course, or just like someone you always see. It might even be like the guy, if you go into like a corner shop and you always buy like some chocolate from the geezer behind the thing, it might just be him. Just think about those people around you and just start small. It's those little things, and more often than not, it's like a snowball and it just like tumbles, and then people will get alongside you. Like when God's moving, like people want to get involved. So and that's great. And you bring them in and do stuff. So yeah, I don't think you need to wait. Get started today.
Yeah, I think what I really liked about what you're sharing as well is that you're using what you have as well. Because I think sometimes it's like, well, I don't have the resources, like I don't have. But you're just like, for running that alpha for like initially your rugby mates, you stood in your front room. And obviously we've all been in the student living rooms where it's like 4 sofas, just like, and you know, it's like, this really was like, they've put a wall in here to add an extra bedroom into the house. So like, but there's not, and it's like, but I guess not using that as a barrier and being like, that isn't going to like put people off necessarily.
No, and like everyone that's come, even if they've come and they've not come into the faith, like they've really valued it and said how awesome it was, like how they've really appreciated like that we spent time to put these things on. Like it's been crazy. There's not been one bad experience from running Alpha all these times. Never had someone be upset.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we're having these discussions, there can be difference of opinion. But again, there's been no anger in these meetings. It's like, wow, that's, thank you, Jesus, for that.
Yeah.
But it's like, people want to have these conversations, and like Alpha is the excuse, and other things like Alpha is the excuse to have them. And you're inviting them to Jesus. You're not inviting them to an event.
Yeah, it's good.
Great.
Which is what we always say. It's like, well, you are inviting them to an event. But what's the event for? It's to introduce them to Jesus, And so like, if that's in your mind, then you're fine.
And like you say, it's all built out of a relationship and the friendship, the genuine friendship that you have with these rugby guys. It's not that you're thinking, I better pretend to be friends with them so I can help them get to know Jesus. You actually deeply care about them and you love them, and so does God.
Like them.
Yeah, they're my mates.
Exactly. So there's this deep longing for them to come to know Jesus, but they also have this relationship and this trust with you that actually they're willing to give it a go because of that friendship that you've built with them very naturally, and because you're using the place where God has placed you and using that as your opportunity. So it's amazing. It's amazing. Well, Rob, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for stepping out in mission. Thank you for all that you're doing for the kingdom of God. And we look forward to hearing everything else that God does in and through you, and the lives transformed and saved through student mission and through Jesus.
Exciting stuff. Thanks, guys, for the chat.
No worries. It's been a pleasure.
Well, what an encouragement it was to hear all of those stories from Rob. So amazing to hear what he is up to, the ways that he's stepping out in mission, and the ways that he's bringing other people along with him. I just think it's so interesting that it all comes from a relational point. It's all about the relationships he's creating with the people around him that then allows for easy invitations to things like Alpha and getting people on board as part of a missional small group as well. All seems to start with these relationships and these friendships he creates with the people around him. Yeah, crazy.
Amazing stuff.
So good. Well, each episode we would love to share with you other stories that we've heard from students in different cities who are being missional or who are finding faith in Jesus as well. And this is to just increase your confidence in what God is doing, but also your confidence in mission as well. So we're going to share a couple of those stories with you now. Ed, why don't you kick us off with a story?
Yes, so this is a story that a colleague of ours called Roscoe was involved in. Roscoe's based in Bristol. So I'm just going to read out this story. It's really encouraging, and I think it's something that should hopefully raise our faith. So one morning during the Bristol Uni Freshers Week, I found myself praying for international students. I didn't really know what to pray for, but I felt led to ask God that international students would find church communities and settle well into university life. While this was happening, a random bakery came to mind that was in the main student area of Bristol. And I thought this might be a prompt from the Spirit, so decided to work there that morning and see what might happen. So I spent the morning in the bakery, but nothing special seemed to be happening, so I decided to move on. While I was leaving, a number of international students walked in. I thought I could at least ask them to do the Fusion Worldview survey on my way out, which is a survey that we as the Fusion team have been doing, asking students all about their attitudes to life and faith. You can find that on our website. And they were happy to answer the questions, and they told me they had just moved to Bristol 3 days ago from China. One student asked me if I was a Christian, probably because the last few questions he'd been asking the survey were related to church, Jesus, prayer, etc. Roscoe says yes, and this student told him that she was raised a Buddhist, but a teacher from her school had told her all about Jesus. Since then, she'd always wanted to know more, but didn't know how to find a church or meet a Christian in the UK. I asked if she would want to come to church on Sunday to find out more about Jesus, and she said yes, definitely. And she came to church and said it was more than I could have ever imagined. She felt peace in the worship, and when she was prayed for as well, she also felt that peace. She also left with her own Bible and said that she couldn't wait to come back again. And since Roscoe has originally shared this story, the student has been coming back regularly and has even given her life to Jesus as well, which is just an amazing story of, like, again, responding to a simple prompt from God, being like, oh, I feel stirred to pray for international students. And I'm just going to go to this area where students may be. I'm just going to allow myself to be interrupted. And even though it looked like nothing hasn't happened, just at that time, God brought a person in who he wanted to meet with in that time, and it's, led to this incredible story of salvation. Yeah, that's so good. I was thinking that as well. I love that part of the story where Roscoe's like, I felt prompted to go to a bakery, and to start with, he's sitting there thinking, why on earth has God brought me here? I mean, there are worse places in the world to wait than a bakery. And I'm sure the bakery had some lovely free Wi-Fi as well, and some lovely coffee.
But just amazing then to see actually God using that situation and God using that prompting to actually see someone come to know him, essentially, is how the story ended, all because Roscoe was willing to listen to what it is that he felt God was prompting in his heart. Amazing. What a great story. I have also got a story, and this is from a student called Kai down in Southampton. Just to make you aware as well, this story does mention both kidnapping and drugs, just to make you aware. Here is Kai's story. I grew up with a Christian grandmother, and when I was 8 years old, my mother also became a Christian. I started to enjoy church, but I didn't experience a deep relationship with the Lord because I was so busy at the time trying to become a football player. At the age of 17, I stopped going to church, and after some time I had a knee injury, ending my dream of being a football player. As a result, I blamed God for my failure, and I walked away from him. I moved from Brazil, to Italy, and started to live a dark life. And my measure of happiness was how much alcohol, how many women, and how much drugs I had. I moved to the UK, and at this point I started to deal drugs in London. On January 5th, 2022, I went to make a deal with other dealers, and they kidnapped me. When I was in that room, I just remembered about Jesus, and I asked him to free me from that place safely. And I was going to stop all my business with drugs. And after a few hours, they liberated me without touching a single hair on my body. After that day, God started to change the route of my life. I moved to Southampton to study, but I discovered the real reason I moved a few months later. I went to the Freshers' Fair, praying for God to help me find a church. And at this point is where Kai met a guy called Will, who shared the gospel with him and talked to him about church. After that, Will then passed Kai on to Sam, a student worker at St. Mary's Church. And Kai continues his story. He says, Sam extended an invitation to come to church on that same day, and I accepted. The Holy Spirit filled my heart that night. I went to Bridge the Gap, and I met Sam Bell. I wanted to be around Christians. After we finished praying, Sam Bell asked if everything was okay, and I explained that my knee was hurting. He kindly asked if he could pray for my knee injury. I allowed it. After the prayer, my knee was still hurting, and I told him that maybe God was not willing to heal me. He replied that God is always willing to heal. And that phrase stayed in my head for the following hours. I decided to believe that God could heal me. I woke up the next morning without any pain, followed by the 2 days of training. That didn't seem to make sense to me. The supernatural power of the Holy Spirit changed the course of my life that day. I started to pray, to read the Bible, and fast consistently to learn more from God and create a relationship. On the 12th of November, at the 10:30 service, I heard the Holy Spirit speaking into my soul the reason why I was in Southampton. I cried out for an entire hour. It was difficult to explain to people around me why I was crying in that way. The experiences since that day are changing and shaping how I see the world. Jesus has changed my existence. I was blind, and now I can see. I found the treasure, and today I'm ready to go into water and be washed and reborn as a new creation. And then he said, I want to thank my church and my friends who never gave up on friendship, especially during the tough times. What an amazing story. And what an amazing story of just God being present in Kai's life, even when Kai had walked away. It's almost like the story of the prodigal son, a father that never lets go of his children, that never stops seeking to meet with his children, even when we turn our backs.
Yeah, and I think what was striking about both those stories, involving people who've come to the UK and stuff, like actually they were both had an encounter with God, or like someone had shared the gospel previously, so they were hungry already to find church. And I think that, that's a good lesson for us to think like, people may already be wanting to come to church, they just don't know how to find church or how to connect with a Christian. So actually for those of us who do know Jesus, who are a part of a church community, just being willing to extend that invitation, in the way that Rob and his friends in Loughborough are extending that invitation.
So
and actually we can see incredible stories of like people coming to faith and people being baptized. It's amazing.
Well, that's about all we've got time for this episode, but thank you so much for joining us and for tuning in, and we hope that you feel inspired and equipped to reach your mates, your course mates, your housemates with the love of Jesus where you are.